Hello, everyone. Welcome to the third episode of Digitalytics Diaries, a video podcast series from Digitalytics, the analytics club of IIM Ranchi. I am Pragya Vishwakarma, and here we unfold the learnings and lessons that are critical for upcoming managers from the leaders in technology. Today, I am very excited to introduce our guest for the session, Mr. Sahil Nair, Senior Associate Director, Human Resources of KPMG India, where he manages the end-to-end employee lifecycle for the tax practice. He is a certified MBTI, NLP, and design thinking practitioner, and is also a regular columnist in various leading HR magazines. He loves interacting with students and is a visiting faculty at various IIMs and IITs across the country. He has dedicated over 1 lakh hours to students on various forums and has impacted over 10,000 lives through his perspectives. He also shares his views regularly on LinkedIn under #HRBytes, which are very inspiring and thought-provoking. I've also been following you for quite some time, sir, and I think that in a time when internet is flooded with content, your posts are short yet very powerful. So it's an absolute pleasure for me to host you here today.
Thank you so much, Pragya. It's an absolute pleasure being with you on this wonderful series.
The pleasure is all mine, sir. So I would like to start with a question about knowing how you started off your career journey. I know that you have graduated in law, so I'm really curious to know, like, what attracted you in HR and when did you decide to pursue your career in it?
Sure. So I think so, Pragya, when I started off, I did my bachelor's in management studies from HR College in Mumbai. And post that, of course, went on to do my MBA as well. And at that point in time, I was just thinking, because I was very, very fascinated with marketing and advertising. And I was not very sure whether I wanted to do marketing or I wanted to do human resources. And when I sat down to really make this choice, what really came to my mind was to say, I had done a lot of projects in marketing and advertising. And at that point of time, I had done live projects with Piyush Pandey, Josie Paul, various other people who were national creative directors, Balki as well, when he was with Low Lintas, and of course then he went on to becoming a director in Bollywood. But at that point of time, he was the national creative director for Low Lintas. And it was a great journey, right? But I really realized that in marketing or advertising, there are a lot of people out there doing great amount of work. But within the HR space, two things really hit my mind. One, that there weren't really too many big names in the HR space. And second, as a function, I think human resources was really facing a huge credibility crisis at that point of time. I think everybody just said, yes, they are the IR guys who do industrial relations, and the rest of the guys make rangolis. The HR guys are known to make rangolis. So yeah. I said, maybe this space really needs someone, and maybe it's a great opportunity for me. Because at the end of the day, whether it be marketing or it be HR, I think people centricity is something that I was very passionate about. In marketing, your customers or your clients are external, and in human resources, your clients or customers are internal, which are your employees. And therefore, I think I chose HR because I felt it was a great space where I could make a difference.
That's great. I mean, that's really amazing. So following that, I would like to know, what are some of the difficult situations or challenges that you have faced or dealt with as an HR? And what have been your learnings from them, if you could share with us?
Sure. So if you look at my LinkedIn, I actually started my career in 2009 with an organization called Orbit Corporation. And then I joined KPMG after that in 2011. And 10 days from now, I'm going to be completing 10 years with KPMG. So if I look at my entire corporate, thank you so much. If I look at my entire corporate experience, and of course, I was teaching a lot more before that and continue teaching as well. One thing that I find personally very, very difficult or challenging as an HR professional, and I'm sure a lot of other people also will relate to this, is when you need to ask someone to leave the organization. I think that's extremely difficult. Now, that could be either basis the individual's performance or for any other reason, doesn't matter. But when you have to ask someone to leave, being a human being yourself, I think it becomes extremely difficult because you don't know what's the story on the other side, right? That person could be the only earning member in the family, or there could be a situation where that person has significant EMIs that the individual needs to pay, and therefore, if he doesn't or she doesn't, it becomes difficult. There could be a situation where someone has ailing parents or young children who need medical attention, and therefore that salary that they're earning is very important for them. And in a situation where, of course, it is obviously a joint call with business and human resources when you really ask someone to leave. And I'm not getting into the categories or reasons why we need to ask people to leave, but to answer your question in a nutshell, I think irrespective or right or wrong, leaving that aside, communicating that news, I think, is very, very difficult. And because at the end of the day, you're realizing that today it's happening to that person, tomorrow it could happen to someone else, day after it could even end up happening to you, right? And therefore, I think that's a very challenging moment. And therefore, what we really end up doing is at least trying to ensure, and I have tried to do that in my career, is help the person understand, is it the situation or is it the individual? And I think one thing that has played out very well is when you're absolutely honest with the person. And a lot of people appreciate that honesty, because the moment you differentiate the problem from the person, or you differentiate to say, you know what, this is the situation because of which this has happened and it's not you, or if it is you, because for the last 4 or 5 months you've been given a lot of examples, you've been told to pull up your socks, your performance is not meeting expectations, and therefore, sorry, maybe in this organization you don't meet the cut, but some other organization will be more than willing to take you. And then if you can go the extra mile, because as HR guys, we are connected with so many other HR professionals in so many other organizations. So we can help the individual outplace them into another organization where their skills could be a lot more relevant or helpful. I think that makes our purpose as an HR person manifest itself. So that's my point, Pragya, to say what's difficult, what's challenging. Of course, roles may be challenging, complexities may come in, you may learn new aspects within the gamut of HR, but personally for me, asking someone to leave is the most challenging situation.
Indeed, I mean, that really sounds very hard. And I hope that we as future HRs will also be compassionate and humble in taking all these steps. So I think it will be an experience for us also. So with this pandemic, according to me, I think the most significant changes that I see in the corporate world, first is the digital transformation almost overnight that companies have had to adopt, and second being that HR is now at the forefront of things, handling situations and bringing in the changes that come with it. So, how do you think HR is adapting to the technology, and what do you think is the future of HR in the digital space?
Sure. So I think that's a very relevant and pertinent question at this point in time, because digital is no longer about technology. And I've been saying this in various forums and conferences as well. I think digital has now become a mindset, right? If you go back pre-COVID times, you saw a lot of business managers who said, work from home doesn't work in my context, or I need the individual to sit in this office right outside my cabin because it is important that we have face-to-face connections. We had a situation where we said, no, but this individual can't work remotely, right? Irrespective of the skills being in place and all of that. And I think COVID, one of the good things that COVID has really done is break all these myths. And what used to happen in a situation where people had all these concerns, today they are the first ones to say, okay, fine, it doesn't matter, because work is still happening. There is great amount of trust that has really built up, because at the end of the day, if work is happening, delivery is not getting impacted, people are still more comfortable. So therefore, it has taken COVID to bring across this mindset shift. And the reason why I say it is not just technology, digital is a mindset, is because you will realize that a lot of people who were very, very insecure about their roles or their jobs because they were thinking that technology will come and wipe it out, today have been forced, and I use the word very carefully, have been forced to move up the value chain. They've learned new skills, they have upskilled themselves because they have realized at the bottom of the pyramid, what's definitely going to happen is automation will come in. And as automation comes in, the machine will do the same job with zero error at a much faster pace. And therefore, in every opportunity, they have found more opportunity. So what they've really done is saying, okay, if the machine's doing that, no worries. What can I do differently that the machine can't do? Which is judgment, which is analysis, right? And which is insights. So of course, the machine will do a lot of data crunching, a lot of number crunching. But at the end of the day, getting the pulse on the ground, getting those insights is what is still at this point in time with humans. And I think that is where a lot of people are upskilling themselves so as to be relevant. And being relevant is very, very important, more than ever before. So to answer your question, Pragya, I think 2 or 3 key things. Number one, in this whole fast-changing digital landscape, I think it is not just HR, but there are multiple touch points, be it banks. How have banks really gone and said, they did years ago to say, bank from anywhere. You don't need to come to the branch, right? You look at OTTs, you look at even Zomato, look at Swiggy. A lot of them are looking at their business models so differently. At one point in time, what was booming as a co-working space and saying, wow, we are thriving because it's an incubation hub, today needs to sit and revisit its business model. Because even though post-COVID and once the vaccine is obviously going all across the country and across the world, people will come back to the workplace, but it's going to be a very different kind of workplace. And therefore, will co-working spaces remain the same as what they were earlier, or will they really change? Or will co-working spaces start offering a similar experience of saying you can leverage on the network even digitally because you're sharing that space together, right? So it's no longer about physical infrastructure space, but it's more about mind space.
I think, yeah, that's really true. And since you touched upon AI and automation, so that brings me to my next question. Digital technologies, we see AI-based interviews now. So do you think that, efficient hiring would be affected because of that?
Yeah, I think that's a very pertinent one because see what's happening is, and I keep giving this example to say, Pragya, let me ask you, right? If you've lost your credit card and you call up the toll-free number, would you prefer talking to IVR or would you want to talk to a human being to say, please block my card, I have lost it? What would you like to do, Pragya?
I think maybe it will be a little reassuring to hear from somebody that I think that it will not be a problem, that your money is safe and sound. I think
So if you
that may be
speak to someone,
reassuring.
yeah, so if you speak to someone, what you're trying to say is that you'll feel more reassured that you're 100% confirmed that your card has been blocked and no further expenses will be billed to you. Right?
Yeah.
So while IVR is more convenient and maybe faster, the whole concept of trust or reassurance is with the human being, because when you hear a human voice, you'll feel, yes, thank God, now my card is blocked.
That's true.
But the real question, Pragya, is how do you know that the person speaking to you is a human and not a robot? You get where I'm coming from?
Yeah, I am.
Yeah, and that's exactly what the future is going to be all about. So today, whether it be the whole space of credit cards, debit cards, or it be human resources, I think technology is going to help us be a lot more efficient, a lot more effective. And at the bottom of the pyramid, which is the entire sourcing funnel of recruitment, is all going to get automated through intelligence, through your applicant tracking systems, through your systems that will really scan CVs through keywords, and various other technologies to bring down CVs to the point of an interview. But will interviews get automated? I don't think so. I think that will still remain a matter of judgment. It will still remain a matter of touch and feel, still a matter of body language, be it virtual or be it in person. And therefore, be it artificial intelligence or machine learning, doesn't really matter. It could be Internet of Things for all we look at, right? But ultimately, it is going to invade into all functions, and HR will be no exception. The only fundamental point I want to leave you with on this question is we're going to be looking at a hybrid model, a model where when you get 10,000 CVs, how do you pick the top 100? How do you bring them to a job description, move them to a group discussion stage by understanding the job descriptions? From a group discussion, how do you put them through a BEI or any other kind of interview and then take them through next stages? So a long answer to a short question, but we're going to be looking at a hybrid model of high tech and high touch, because at the end of the day, it's going to be the entire hiring experience that is going to matter to every candidate.
Yeah, I completely agree. And so you talked about like the human touch, and from there I will move on to my next question. So we talk a lot about the cultural fit nowadays, and with the advent of the fast paced work dynamics, changing work dynamics, and the fast paced digital transformations that are taking place, how do you think organizations can ensure that the culture is not distorted, especially in the remote working environment where the physical and the visible cues are missing from our lives? Like in the office workspace, they are there at every corner to enforce the culture amongst us. So how do you think that is going to be impacted?
I think your questions are just getting better and better as we move along this discussion, but thank you for that one. See, to my mind, culture is a very, very fuzzy word, right? Because everybody has a very different interpretation of the word culture, right? For some people, culture is about the core values and the beliefs. For some people, it's about what happens, are you walking the talk? For some people, it's more about what does the leader think the culture should be, because the culture of the leader becomes the culture of the organization, so on and so forth, right? But I think one definition which really resonates with me about culture is a single fabric that actually binds all the people in the organization, right? And then it really manifests itself to say, what do you really stand for? And as an organization, what you stand for is something that will exhibit itself irrespective of whether people are watching or they're not watching, right? And that is what is paramount, because even when people are not watching, if you're doing the right thing, that talks about your culture. And coming to your question, be it physical, in-person meeting, be it remote working, it doesn't matter. Because if you have the perception that in remote working people are not watching, you will still end up doing the same thing, because that is culture for you. If the person's below your nose, right in front of your cabin, you'll still do the same thing, irrespective of whether the person's on a call or the person's just continuously staring outside the glass to see what you're doing. Because ultimately, what's going to matter is the whole concept of trust. And that builds a particular culture in irrespective of what the organization stands for. Now, on the other hand, why do so many organizations struggle with this fuzzy word called culture? That's because whenever there is a churn in talent and you hire people from outside, as you said, right? If you keep growing, so on and so forth, a lot of people bring their culture with them of their previous organizations. So then what ends up happening is, under the large umbrella of your original culture, you start seeing these small subcultures. And that also dissipates over a period of time when people move in and out of the organization. So what becomes very, very paramount and important is two things. One, re-emphasis of the culture in everyday behavior. So if you stand for trust and you see a leader or a manager or a team member not trusting another, you need to go back and lead to a lot of reinforcement to say, we stand for trust. Be it external, be it internal, be it a peer, be it a senior colleague, a junior colleague, whoever, trust is paramount. Second, if anyone is flaunting, manipulating, changing, altering this whole concept that is integral to what you believe in, you need to call it out. And not only just call it out, but also warn the individual to say, this is not in line with our culture. This is not our policy. This is not our framework. This is not what we believe in. And if it repeats itself, take stronger action. Because unless there is a deterrent, people will say, theek hai na, what's the big deal? So you need to ensure these two things so that your culture is intact, so that everyone breathes the same culture. Let me give you a classic example to understand this better. Go back to the whole episode, and again, I feel really hurt and pained when I talk about it. But if you go back to the Mumbai attack at the Taj, now that to me is culture. It's not just about hospitality. It's not just about five-star service, but it's about Atithi Devo Bhava. No one really told them, you know what, if something like this happens, put your life before your guest's life, or put your guest's life before your life. No one told them that. No one had to think twice to say, hey, main apni jaan bachaun, let me get out of the hotel because rest will manage themselves. Classic. Now that, to my mind, is embodiment of culture, because that speaks volumes. No training session is going to tell you, Pragya, save someone else's life at the cost of your life. When jab maut aati hai na, samne sab apni jaan pehle bachate hain. But we've seen so many examples, from the chef to the butlers to everyone else, the front desk, just putting their life at stake to protect their guests. Now that is culture.
So that was a very impactful and a powerful example, and I think now I understand it better, what culture really means and how can we ensure that it does not get distorted. So moving on. So since you're so close to the student community, I am sure that you must be getting these questions very often. And so I would also like to know, what is the most important skill that an HR professional must possess in this digital world? Something that we cannot do away with.
See, I think, what has really happened is over the last couple of years, this whole manner in which the world is changing so rapidly has become very, very centered to our existence. Like if you look at our parents or their parents, they went through formal education, be it being a graduate. Very few people became postgraduates, right? Our fathers, grandfathers, and their parents, right? And they lived a life till the age of 60 and they retired with just a BCom or just a BA or just a BSc. Then the generation after them, of course, realized that post-graduation is important, and then came the MBAs and the MTechs and the chartered accountants and all of that. But I think today what is very important, be it an HR professional or anybody else, is to be relevant from a skill perspective on a regular basis. So today within the HR space, if the whole focus is on hyper-personalization of every employee, right? How does one understand Uberization of talent? How does one understand what does a Netflix culture of learning mean, right? Which is again very, very hyper-personalized. So Sahil's learning need may be very different from Pragya's learning need, though both of us may be at the same level, in the same designation, in the same organization, passing out from the same B school, correct? And therefore, how do we cater to that? So I think as HR professionals, three things that are very important from a skill perspective. Number one, the ability to hear. You need to exactly know what are people talking and what's the pulse on the ground, which means people need to feel comfortable coming and talking to you, right? which means in your interactions, you need to be absolutely empathetic and a great listener. Because otherwise, if you want to have that high head and say high heels, doesn't matter, it's okay. I know what I need to do. I can sit in an AC cabin and make policies and people will love it. Doesn't work that way. You need to have your ears very close to the ground to exactly know what the pulse is, number one. Number two, in every interaction, you need to keep your employees at the center, which means display great amount of employee centricity with empathy. That's point number two. Point number three, as you soak in what people are saying, as you develop great amount of empathy, you don't really react, but you respond to them. You need to also culminate all of this into great insights, because all of this needs to have a linkage of productivity and happiness. Now, many a times, if you really ask people to say, this was pre-COVID, to say, Monday, hey, let's go to work, how many people would really be excited, right? So how do you really bring in the whole concept of saying, you'll do great work, I need your 100% when you're doing great work, and of course, you'll get rewarded 100%. And find that balance of productivity and happiness. Because otherwise, what's going to happen is people are going to start look forward to weekends, to really enjoy themselves, go out on a Friday night, have a couple of drinks, bitch about a couple of people, because that's the stress that has accumulated from Monday to Friday. Now, I'm not living in an idealistic world to tell you that this is very easy to crack. This is difficult because, as I said, different people, different mindsets, different ways of thinking. A boss could be someone who's someone who likes to micromanage and stay in control. The team member will say, you know what, you've told me what to do, leave it to me, I'll do it. And that's going to lead to a clash or a conflict. Of course, there's going to be stress. But as an HR professional, without policing, how do you understand these situations? And how do you provide solutions without being political? I think that is very important. Because as an HR person, the moment you side with the management or you side with the employee, you've lost the game. So the most important skill, and you may say it's very basic, Sahil, but to my mind, the most important skill is to be an independent bouncing board. Because the day HR loses its independence and starts taking sides, I think the HR should just resign. The person should just resign. The department should just collapse. Because HR needs to be independent at all times.
Yeah, I think that was a very sound advice, and I'm sure that we'll take it forward to our careers as future HR professionals, and we'll really benefit from it. That leads me on to the last question. Any book that you would like to recommend to us for being effective managers? Something
absolutely. Absolutely. I'm a firm believer that a lot of stuff of what we do or what we understand or who we become is thanks to books. But Pragya, if you honestly ask me, I've been struggling in this space because a lot of podcasts have actually spoiled us, because people who don't have the patience to sit and read a book end up listening to a lot of audio books or podcasts. But there's one book that a friend recommended to me during this pandemic and said, you must read it, How to Love the Shit Out of Life by Sally Ann Hurley. And I think that's a brilliant, brilliant book. And I would recommend that to everyone, because in the manner in which people have started confusing self-love with being narcissistic, I think there's a very, very thin line between loving yourself and only loving yourself, right? And more importantly, I think life is just so beautiful. We just complicate it because when we are kids, we're in a hurry to grow up, and when we grow up, we wish we could go back to our childhood. We wish we could nurture the child within us, and more importantly, as you start earning a lot of money, because that's what you really want to do as you grow up. And when you earn that money, then you sit back and say, no, but you know what? I bought so many nights at a 5-star, but am I getting good sleep? Right? So you'll want the most comfortable bed in the world in the most exotic location. But if you're not going to get sleep, can you really buy sleep? You can't. You can be at a great position in a great organization with beautiful fancy titles. But if people don't respect you, is it even worth it? What's the point of a leader being a leader with no followers? What's the point of having a fantastic joint family with no happiness? Right? And I don't mean to sound philosophical, but I'm just trying to say that these small things are things that we sacrifice to get to where we want to be. And once we get there, we say, no, but you know what? These small things matter a lot more. So all I'm trying to say is be aspirational, be ambitious, but don't really give up on these small things that make you happy.
That's really wonderful, sir. Because I think as we go forward and as more and more devices come up, that is really going to be a very big challenge for everybody. And it sounds like an amazing book. I will definitely read it.
You should, because see, Pragya, I'm making a very simple point, right? While the book talks about happiness and all of that, even if you don't read the book, just think of it, right? How much time do we spend on screens? And with Zoom and with COVID, the screen time has gone up significantly for all of us. And when we're having dinner with family, if you're still on our Insta or our Snapchat and the LinkedIns of the world, are we even, forget digesting your food properly, are you even spending time with your parents or your spouse or your children on the dining table, which is a great thing to do. So the whole concept of saying we will have Khana together is just a very mystic thing, because you're sitting on the table physically having Khana together, but mentally you're somewhere else. So I think if we, and all of us have been guilty of it. I'm not standing here preaching to say, yes, I've mastered it all. But what I've definitely tried to do is these small things. I try and really do it on a daily basis so that at least those 10 minutes or 15 minutes of family time, having dinner together, is without the mobile phone. So put the phone on charging so that the phone's nowhere near you. Get to the dining table and have a lovely meal together.
Very, very true. And I think those small 10 minutes make a large difference in our lives. If we are going through some stress, that small time to ourselves or with our family or with our loved ones really makes a difference.
Absolutely.
So with that, we have come to the end of this episode. I am sure that your leadership journey and insights will benefit us and all our listeners. And on behalf of Team Digitalytics, I would like to thank you so much for taking out time from your busy schedule for us and sharing your experiences and thoughts with the Students' Fraternity. We are honored to have you with us for the podcast.
Pragya, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure sharing this space with you and sharing some of my thoughts. Of course, I'm available on LinkedIn and otherwise. At any point in time you guys want to reach out, more than happy to be in touch with any one of you who's seeing this video. But thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you to our listeners as well for listening to this podcast, and stay connected.